Okay, I'm going to try this, and you tell me whether you can hear me or have a problem.
Good.
Good. Okay, so I can use microphones, but our elders taught us that we need to be able to speak without a microphone. We do two things. We speak without notes, and we speak without a microphone. So, yeah. Yeah, I can get really loud. Guapo hasiayu, skʷalx to all Skagit. My Skagit name is skʷalx. I was 35 years old when I got that name. In our family, you don't get names as children. You wait until you can carry that name in a respectable way. So if you were named after your Grandma Mary or your Grandpa John, you wouldn't want to carry that name and then disappoint that name. It's an honorable name. So I waited a long time for our name. And in fact, it was the first name given in our family in generations. And now we've had another one since then, and we would have lost that process. So you're named after somebody. Before I start speaking, I never really know what I'm going to say, so you're going to kind of get what you get. It can be different if you've seen me before, but I like to start with a blessing by Vi Hilbert. Does anybody know who Vi Hilbert is? She worked very hard. She's an Upper Skagit elder. She's passed some years ago, but she worked really hard to record all the first speakers and the stories and the language, created a dictionary for our Lashutsi language, and she had incredible wisdom. If you get a chance, she created a symphony, the Healing Heart of Lashutsi, that they played down at the Seattle Symphony, and go online and listen for her story, because you can imagine this 80-year-old woman having a major composer compose a piece, and then got everybody there to do this for free. And it's now been done again recently, and I think they're going to do it again this year. It's just amazing, the story. So if you get a chance, look that up.
What's the name again?
The Healing Heart of Lashutsi. And you can find, we're going to do a story at the end, just so you know it's interactive. You're going to have to solve a big problem. You need all of you to do it. Vi Hilbert is also on the University of Washington site. And you can see some of her stories where she's been videoed and speaks in English and Lashutsi, and there's some of the stories you can hear. And it's so beautiful hearing a first speaker. It's really powerful. Glapu si'eb di'ishid, tigwi tabuthid chud, tigwi tabuthid chud, daiha tia sasok chud, altias laheo, as kodit sucha, as ushub tabucha, shak siab di'ishid, utigwi tabuthidcha, altias diala, uthali siab, uquahwal tagolcha. To all of you, dear people, we give you thanks. We thank you. It is good that we could be here together today. We pray and humble ourselves to our Creator. We give thanks that all of you are here. We help each other. We help each other in this way. We strengthen one another. So am I okay if I'm here? Okay. The first thing I want to tell you, because we'll be talking about cultural things all the time, I always worry about saying that with the line in there about we pray and humble ourselves to our Creator. And tribal people don't separate church and state. It is your act of being in the world. But also, we don't tell anybody how they're supposed to see that relationship. That is completely yours and everybody's right. So it isn't saying our way, it's your way in that. So that's one of the respects that Vi put in here, is that we recognize however you see that is up to you. We're not telling you how to see that. Ready? I got my own button pusher here. Isn't that great? We can go one more. I come from the, I have to go back and do this, Washington, Dan, Moses, Jones, Martin family. So I am Snoqualmie, Yakima, Skagit, and Swinomish. But I'm an enrolled member of the Skagit tribe, and like the government does in their wisdom, they don't make mistakes. I have my grandmother and her sister were the only two siblings. And when the government came in, they enrolled my great aunt full-blooded Yakima and my grandmother full-blooded Skagit. They just shared them and cleaned them up. And we recognize all of our heritage. It is a government thing when we say we're enrolled in a tribe. It is a government thing. We never would do that. And it's going to cause us lots of problems in the future, as I may be enrolled as Skagit. But truthfully, I don't know if I qualify with my history. But because they did that, I do. But we're going to come across the point where there's so many intertribal marriages that you won't qualify for your own tribe. And that's not our culture. Our culture is once you come into our community, you are our community. You become part of that community. Ooh. Interesting. I don't know what that is.
I'm still looking at it.
Okay, that's okay. I know enough of this one to do this. So a lot of times when I talk to people, they're like, well, that was a long time ago. What does this matter now? It wasn't a long time ago. I'll be speaking about my family and several generations before. So my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and if you're not sure that affects me and my grandchildren, it does. It wasn't a long time ago. So when I talk about some of these things that are more difficult, the first thing I want you to know is I'm not putting blame out there for anyone, and there is no benefit in you feeling like, oh, this is bad or you're guilty. I just want you to have our story. So I don't want you, if you feel those feelings or whatever, that's not what I'm trying to do, is place any blame. It's just our history. That's what those things were. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna go here. There are over 570 tribes in the United States, and each one of those are sovereign nations. So you'll have areas where the cultures are the same. We share a lot of the same values, treating our elders, caring for our community. We have our own cultural kind of laws, but you can go from region to region and they're very different. So in the Northwest, our culture is very much water related and similar. But you're going to go down to Navajo country or go to the east, and you have different housing, you have different religions. It's not exactly the same. And each one of those, as a sovereign nation, gets to make up who they enroll, what their laws are, what their values are. We are a government within the government. I wish it were that simple, but that's generally true. We have 29 tribes in Washington State. It's a lot of tribes. And a lot of small tribes like the Upper Skagit, we have about 1,400 people. We were recognized in 1975, and there were only about 500 tribal members then. So we've grown a lot, and there are tribes as little as 300. There were some tribes in Washington, like Skʷalx, that when I worked for them were like 230 people. Very small tribes. And there are still tribes like Snohomish, Duwamish. There are still tribes that are not recognized. And we didn't get recognized till 75, and we really had to fight for that recognition. And what they'd say is, you didn't have an established government. Or we had bans. Skagit land is from Mount Vernon up to the mountains, the Cascade Mountains. And they said, well, you were just loosely grouped of people, so you weren't really a tribe. And so there are a lot of reasons they say, but it was 1975, even though we were wards of the court, or the federal government, not the court, we were wards of the federal government, we didn't have a recognized tribe. And what that meant was, it was much longer for my great-grandfather to be able to vote. My grandfather could not buy his own alcohol because it was illegal. And as an adult male, he didn't have that choice. In fact, the way I know that is I read an article in our local paper saying John and Harry Bob were arrested for buying Oscar Washington alcohol. That was in the newspaper. It was a crime. As an adult man, it's like you can't make any choices. So we talked about enrollment, sizes of the tribe. Yakima, Spokane, there's some fairly good sized tribes around here. Okay, can we go again? I'm on this government thing right now. So I'll be talking about a few different things like Indian child welfare and freedom of religion, those kinds of things. But you know we're in trouble when the government gets in and makes a law to protect things. So this country was built on freedom of religion, but tribal people could be arrested for practicing their traditional religion. And I think it was, 1978, that they had to make a law so we didn't, so we could practice our traditional religion. And they did, in 1910, they created the 1910 Indian Shaker Church. And we did all of our funerals and stuff at the Shaker Church in Concrete, and so I would be there with my mom all the time, and I'm watching this. She raised us Catholic, and I'm watching this. I said, this kind of looks like Catholic traditional. And what I believe is that they did this because it had the cross and the altar and all that stuff. But all the teachings were traditional teachings. And I think that that's the way they masked giving these teachings. So if the law came, they would look like they, they crossed themselves 4 times, which is part of a traditional teaching. All this, I think that that's part of why they created this. But all the teachings that they did in this were our traditional teachings. Much later, for the right to vote, and every tribe didn't come along at the same time. I know my great-grandfather, when he was given the right to vote, went down to the courthouse, and he had to stay there all day before they would let him vote. Took a little bit of work. In 1978, we created the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed. Anybody know what that is?
No.
I wouldn't really expect you to. It's a law. We had so many children being taken from our homes, and they would go in non-native homes, and they'd be adopted out, and then our children would lose their identity. But, so I'll be talking about boarding schools and Indian child welfare. When boarding schools ended, Indian child welfare, adopting out children became the next way of taking the children out of the way. So let's go ahead and go on, and they're gonna watch time for me too. I told you this, that the tribes are sovereign nations. They have their own constitution, general council. They call them senators, board members, and our own laws. And unless it is like a murder or kidnapping, stuff like that, then the federal government will come in and the FBI, which has been probably not as much as we need in terms of responses for missing and murdered Indigenous people. Okay. I already talked about this, that in our area, most of our culture is similar. Our religious practices are similar. Our stories share East and Western Washington. They can have changes. But in our area, our culture is going to be pretty the same down to Nisqually. So from Upper Skagit to Nisqually speaks Lushootseed. That's the language that I read to you. Samish, Nooksack, and Lummi speak a Salish language that's different from ours, but the cultures are still very similar. Let's go ahead. So, people ask me, and they're curious, like, when you're talking about Native people, what do you call them? Anybody?
Native neighbors.
Native? Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So people ask me, do you say Indian? Do you say Indigenous? Do you say Native? The number one thing that Native people like to be called is by their tribe. Mm-hmm. And my brother, my eldest brother, he wants to be called Indian because his grandpa said you're an Indian. Mm-hmm. I prefer Native, but you really, without ill intent, you really can't say something wrong. There's nothing wrong. You say you can't go wrong with Native, but yeah, they did a poll amongst Native people, and the number of things you'd call me Upper Skagit, and I'd be like, that's good. Okay. We lived in villages along the river, some really big. There was one village that had a longhouse that was the size of a football field. But these homes, they had permanent homes and then summer homes. So you could travel down closer to the bays and trade and do whatever, fish, get clams. I'm not a good Skagit, I don't like clams. That's why my auntie gave me a Yakima name. I wasn't a good Skagit. Go ahead. We had the Point Elliott Treaty in 1855, which you may know about, which is where we gave up our lands and we agreed to have some sort of treaty, which we really didn't. It was negotiated in something that would be similar to a Pig Latin. It was a trade language. And even though we had many, many people that could speak as interpreters, they still wouldn't allow it. It was a Chinook jargon. And so it was not a very good way to negotiate a treaty. If you imagine going back and you can only use the words in your preschool language and you're going to negotiate these serious things, it wasn't a very good way to do that. So these are our tribal elders, and they would meet every month at the Shaker Church in Concrete, and they were working to get us recognized. They got nothing for this. They didn't get money, they didn't get anything. This is my great aunt, this is my sister's grandfather. I'm blessed to know all these people. What they wanted was for their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they worked tirelessly for this. And the love that they had for what they saw being recognized was so powerful. How many people in your community work tirelessly just for the greater good of their community? I think that is something that is really strong that we need to make sure it's good for us, it's good for our family, is it good for our community and generations to come. Go ahead. This is my grandparents, and they lived up by Marble Mount, and my grandparents were one of the last arranged marriages. Anybody got an arranged marriage? Probably not. I kind of think it's not a bad idea, but so these are my grandparents and my oldest uncle, and in families in those longhouses live together, so this would be really common. You'd have aunts, uncles, grandparents. And I talked to the kids because, anybody grandparents here? Yay, grandparents. Best job ever. But the kids were with the grandparents all the time because parents had physical work to do. Who has all the knowledge and patience and whatever? It's the grandparents. So the grandchildren would often be with their grandparents. My great aunt, my grandmother died before I was born. My great aunt talked about going with her grandparents down the river, and she'd be gone for weeks. Think about that time she had with her grandparents, the teachings, the absolute love and devotion that she felt from them. And mom and dad were great. I mean, she's visiting the relatives, she's doing all this stuff. It was a really idyllic life in that way. That sometimes as parents you have so much to do, you might not give them the attention or be a little short. You didn't have to worry that so much with grandparents. We're all about loving and spoiling those kids. So this is a summer house. That could be, you can see it's way more temporary. But we were blessed being able to be water people, traveling down the river and going and having access to different relationships, different communities. So all the tribal people had a protocol for building relationships and being invited into other countries. You just didn't walk in there. There's a protocol for asking to come to your community, and we had very strong relationships. And of course, a lot of intermarriage. You don't want to marry your cousin. Which is why I introduced myself the way I did, because if you don't, you're going to marry your cousin. Go ahead. One of our traditional ways of cooking salmon, which is one of our main foods, is on these kind of sticks. It can be dried or this. And if you've had salmon like this, you know it's like the best thing ever. Go ahead. Or smoked. One of the things that tribal people did from spring to winter was do the work on canoes, houses, food, storage. So we were among the richest people in the world. Imagine never having to worry about if you had enough food, or you had a safe place to live, you had friends and community take care of you if you had a problem. We were rich in that of what was important. So years ago, I saw there was a priest at Tulalip, and he spoke Lashutsi, and he'd say his sermons in Lashutsi. But I was reading some of his writings, and he was talking about how the Tulalip people were Ushabab, and Ushabab was pitiful. So I would use that pitiful spirit, but they were pitiful, they were poor, he said. And I'm like, when they did the treaty, they were supposed to have a year to go on that reservation, and they started moving them the first week, but took away their ability to catch salmon, to hunt, to do all these things, and they were starving. So they were Ushabab, but they were that because the government put that on them. And the other thing they had is the superintendents that took care of reservations would also steal a lot of the supplies, and there'd be less for the people. So I think about the richness of what we had available to us, and go, we were rich. Okay, go ahead. This is a canoe carver. We believe everybody has gifts. Your job is to figure out what they are. Maybe you're a hunter, a canoe carver, a holy person, and everybody is as important as the next person. There's nobody that stands out above. Which, you know, so it wouldn't matter if you were the grocery clerk or the president, you would be treated the same way. And I think we could probably do a little better job of that. Okay. This is a traditional cedar dress, and back in the 70s, you know, of course the women had made these dresses for a long time. They had not done a lot of the work because they put everything away culturally. Awesome. And I'll pass this around. So the women got together, and so much of what we had lost in ceremony and traditions, the elders had to come together and piece things together. So if you've ever had a family tradition and you had to go with all the cousins and say, now what do you remember about that? That's what they had to do. So the women got together, and this was their practice, this dress, about how to make it. And then they made Vi Hilbert one, and it's in the Burke Museum in Seattle. Vi didn't like wearing it very much because she said it was itchy. Yes. So cedar was one of the core foundation of our culture. You could have cedar baskets, you had cedar homes, you had cedar mats, almost anything we could do with cedar. And these are I just brought some cedar stuff. This is what it starts with after they strip the bark. And eventually, it's going to be some of those things. This basket is probably close to 100 years old, but you wouldn't know it because it's been put up in a place that didn't have any sunlight or anything. And somebody here, this was my mom's, must have gave it to her because it has the whale, which would be a coast like Tulalip. Okay. So we're going to go into some more difficult stuff. We got recognized in 1975. At the time, we had a settlement for Snoqualmie and Upper Skagit, and we got 90 cents an acre. This is still in the 70s. It was paid for back in the 1800s. For both of my settlements, I got a little over $700 for all our land, and we have 1.5 million acres at Skagit. I don't know what we had at Snoqualmie. So the idea of like, hey, I like this. I'm just going to come move here. I haven't tried that with anybody, but I kind of think nobody would really like that very much. They also gave the babies away. This is a book on how to take care of an Indian baby. Like somehow that'd be different than any other baby. Yes. You could buy an Indian child for $10. Yeah. And the idea that Native people weren't human. We could take your land, we could take your children, and this goes on from here, so go ahead. You can keep it. This is just some of the baskets. I just love the gifts the Creator gives us for doing things with our surroundings. So go ahead. And this is the Shaker church I taught you about. Remember, I said it looked like a Catholic with the altar and stuff.
Is it still there?
It's still there in concrete.
Okay.
Yeah, and but we have a tribal gym, cultural community buildings where we do those things now. But you get really strong memories from having a whole community come together. There's very strict tradition around funerals. They're 4 days, and so there's a lot of love and emotion and memories in this church. And there's not as many Shakers. There's not that many Shakers anymore. It's something that's kind of fallen away. And there's a lot more traditional people who practice traditional religion, smokehouse. So, okay, go ahead. So I'm going to start with boarding schools. Anybody know a lot about boarding schools? Yeah. So I come from 3 generations of boarding school. My great-grandmother, she didn't speak English when she went, and she went to Tulalip. My grandmother, who didn't speak English either, and she started at Tulalip and ended at Chemawa, and Chemawa is in Salem, Oregon. So when your children were about 5 or 6 years old, they called him the government man. The government man would come and take your children.
Oh.
And so if grandpa, uncle, grandma, and this is particularly hard for me for the men, because the men feel like protectors. That's their job as the family. They are to protect their family. They couldn't do anything about it. They could not stop this. The children went for generation after generation, and my mom also went to Chemawa and graduated from Chemawa. So what happens with that is that you are taught everything about your culture, your family is not good. It's not good, because we need to fix you and do this. We're going to teach you English, we're going to teach you how to eat, we're going to teach you how to pray, and if you speak that language, you're going to be punished. So they were doing some interviews with some of our elders and said, they were talking about their language, and they would just shut down. And one of them closed her eyes and said, I could just taste the lye soap. She couldn't even stand to talk about it. It's so rigid. And that gets passed down from generation to generation in almost a cellular way. You just don't even know. You just know that you kind of enculturate and you're safe and low. Go ahead. So this is actually Tulalip, and they were the biggest. The problem with this is that these kids went down there and got tuberculosis and flu and those kind of things. They slept with the windows open. It was actually these other students that helped take care of the sick ones. But you may or may not know if you lost a child. You may or may not know getting that news. Go ahead. And this is Chemawa. I was so taken by this little girl looking out there. My mom had 2 younger sisters at Chemawa, and fortunately she had 2 younger sisters at Chemawa, but it was her job to kind of mother them in this place. It's 600 miles away, and could you imagine how lonely you felt without your aunties and uncles and cousins? And I think about that all the time, about that loneliness. And that's my mom. She was salutatorian of her class. She's very smart, but she lost her mom when she was 13 years old, right before her Christmas break. And she went back to Chemawa after Christmas break and never got to go home again. So she's grieving the loss of her mother with her 2 little sisters alone. And I can't imagine the depth of that loneliness. And for the families, you could write to your kids twice, once at Christmas and once on their birthday. And you could also, I couldn't really figure out when I was growing up, my mom didn't really speak badly of the boarding schools. And then when she got to be in her 40s, we talked her into going to college, which was her dream, and she never made it. Say, hey, we're all grown up, why aren't you? She went and got a degree in political science and became a major political activist. Mm-hmm. She knew that giving voice was the most powerful thing you could do. And we were raised, even though we never met anybody in college, you're going to go there, whatever that was. And we all did, but it was really hard to be a first generation in college, and it was like being a fish out of water. But she said the only thing they can't take away from you is your education. And that was really important. And then so she ended up getting her degree and was just powerful as an activist. Go ahead. This is my beautiful mom. And that's my grandparents and my great-grandparents. And she fell. I mean, she had some really hard times, but she kept getting up. If you can imagine not having somebody to teach you how to be a mom or an auntie, and this has been generations, you kind of have to figure out, okay, I kind of like the way y'all parent, I'll try that. But everything is kind of a mystery. So there were a lot of traditional things we didn't do that the school kids did, like we never had a Halloween costume. Well, what would my mom know about Halloween costumes? Or Easter bunnies? I mean, they just were foreign. At first we thought, well, we don't get to do anything. Who would have taught her to do this? Besides just basic parenting skills. You've been institutionalized for 3 generations. How much good, really maternal skills are you going to get? But when our elders became grandparents, they knew how to do that because they had all spent time with their grandparents until they went to school. So it was our safety net. So this is actually my mom's diploma from the Department of the Interior. Think about that. You get your high school diploma from the Department of the Interior. Go ahead. I found this recently when I was moving. And Chemawa still exists. You do not have to go there. It's a high school. And, you know, I think for some kids that really works. It may be a safer place for them. For me, when I see that, it still carries all the memories of the generations before. Go ahead. So, this is the last part I'm going to tell you about boarding school. This is Annabelle. Annabelle's in her 90s. She's about this big and the toughest woman I have ever met. And she was the youngest of 13 children, and I went to work for the tribe when I was 20. We had just been recognized for 2 years. So ever since then, every time I meet an elder, I'll say, did you go to boarding school? Because I wanted to understand my mom. I wanted to learn more about her experience. And Annabelle, all 6'2" of her, stood up and said, nope, I never went. She was the youngest of like 13 children. And she said the government man came to take me, and her older siblings, who were now young adults, stood in front of her and said, you're not taking her. You're not taking this one. Wow. I heard that part of the story first and went and cried for 2 days. It's so much emotion that these children were going to say her. Well, the rest of the story is the government man was talking to her dad, who was a Shaker minister. He owned a mill, had really good relationships upriver. And he's talking to the government man and saying, could I please just raise this one child? He was begging, can I please just raise this one child? Which took me more time to cry. The idea that this honorable, dignified man is begging to raise one of his children. So that's Annabelle, and she says, I was spoiled.
And she's well, I was spoiled.
She was spoiled, yeah. So after the boarding schools were done, they needed to figure out another way to take kids. And in 1978, they had to create the Indian Child Welfare Act so that children would not be placed in non-native homes. And I actually served on the Indian Child Welfare Committee at DSHS for more than a decade. So any native child that was out of their home had to be reviewed each month in this committee to make sure that things were being done properly. So I think this is just good social work, but the children have to go with their family first, aunts, uncles, cousins, other tribal members next, and any other tribal people next. So their family, their tribal people, other tribal people, and the last outside of their community. Doesn't it sound like just good social work that you try to keep your children in your family if you could do that? But that wasn't the case. And we lost many, many children to the system who they lose who they are, and it's really hard to recover that. Go ahead. So I was talking about doing these presentations about boarding schools, and anybody here know SWAN? He's a gifted musician, speaker. He's just really amazing. And yeah. So you can look him up. You'll hear a couple of his. But he said, Kay, don't forget about the lost children. And those are the children that were adopted out, and he was one of the lost children. He was adopted into a non-native home. learned to play violin quite young, and he lived in the basement, or the downstairs of their house, and he really didn't come up much unless they were kind of showing him off. But you don't know why you look different, why you feel different, why your heart's different. And so it's been a lifelong journey for him to find out who he is as a Lummi man. And he is just gifted at that. But children, I would hear in ICW meetings, well, what does it matter where the children are adopted to as long as they're loved? Because they get to this place where your young people are deciding they were puberty, that age, and go, my hands don't look like yours. My hair doesn't feel like yours. I have this different feeling inside, and you know you're different. And no child wants to be different. So yeah, it's really important to have a loving home, but I think it's more important to connect in the community that you're in. So that is always the first goal, and tribes have the right to intervene. In court cases, they can actually intervene and help protect their children. So go ahead. So SWAN is sharing this message with you if you can hear it.
That I know who I am is evidence of my education. How I know who I am is my culture. The application or acquisition of knowledge is the measure of my intelligence. The systemic denial of my identity, culture, and inherent intelligence is genocide. To genocide. From my culture, I've learned to recognize and acknowledge the journey of all that honor us with their presence. From my honor, I can recognize their truth, feelings, significance, and the passions they act on by their own volition, including but not limited to the recognition and acknowledgement of my honor. From that grace, honor becomes an equalizer on the scales of justice, and the pipeline divine love flows through. This is the transformational power of amazing grace.
He's such an amazing speaker. We'll go ahead and go on. If we have time, we'll do his last one. I wanted to end with a story, so you have to kind of keep me on the timeline. So this last part will be really quick. Clearly, one of the effects of generations of trauma is, and I especially knew this in my grandfather, that he no longer could be the protector of his family. He couldn't practice his religion. He literally lost his man's identity. And I could feel that. So he was alcoholic, and he died from sclerosis of the liver. And I could respect the being lost in that, knowing who you are. Drug addiction is really a problem now. We have higher suicide rates, domestic violence. And this is work that has to come from the community. And part of that work is understanding the journey that we've been on, so we can have grace to our ancestors that maybe fell on their knees and didn't stand up. But understanding the journey they went on helps us understand where that came from. So go ahead. So the way that I believe that we do healing is our songs, our stories, our language, our cultural traditions, we're all taken from us. And so the more that we reclaim those and we become siab, honorable, then the more that we can heal. So I historically have not been a public speaker. I was very shy. But I want people to know the journey that my family's been on and how incredibly strong and resilient they have to be to keep moving through this journey. And so we reclaim our stories and our songs and our language, and it's decades of journey. But that's healing. We are siab. We are honorable people. We are tribal people, and we need to take back that where we've been told we're not good enough. My mom got that message all the time when she was a young woman. She went shopping after she got paid, and she was downtown Mount Vernon, and she was in this store, and all of a sudden they left, and all of a sudden my mom looked over her shoulder, and the clerk, wherever the Indian girls went, they were spraying perfume. So it's a long change of saying, I'm honorable. Go ahead. So we are resilient, and we are strong, And our spirituality should be in every part of our life every day. It is our teachings. Native people like to laugh. And you'll know we really love you if we tease you. So if you get teased, it's just because we love you. A family is really big. We do have mental health problems and drug and alcohol, and a lot of the community now is coming together to support people who are in recovery, who have been in this place. So it's becoming also a community healing, and then recovering our lost culture. Go ahead. Canoe journey, anybody been to canoe journey? Yeah, and they come to Coupeville, I think.
Yes,
But-
since 2010.
No, but if you can get down to some of the other landings, it's amazing what the people who go on canoe journey are being taught culture all along the way, so especially our young people. And it's really healing for them. Go ahead. I know I'm running out of time. He said, I have taken elders pictures for many years, just, on the spur of the moment. We have elders lunches. We have elders lunches where we travel all over. When we go to Tulalip, their elders lunch is about 1,000 different Native people. It is so amazing. So it's like getting together, and it's like, oh, you just breathe. It's 1,000 Native people there. Okay. Oh, and I put the veteran in there because one of the most respected part in our community is veterans. We have by percentage, by population, one of the highest percentages of people who serve in the military. And if you know about code talkers and all that, World War II, back when they were doing that, they weren't United States citizens. They did not have to serve in the military. And the other picture, my son was there. He went to Iraq. And you can imagine his mom, I just wanted to hold on to his foot. He could have excused himself from going there at any time as part of our treaty. But it's not in his DNA. It's just not going to happen. Mom might have wanted it to happen, but he didn't. So this is our community having a wellness walk. And so that's growing and growing every year. And this happens in a lot of tribal communities. So that goes together with all the cultural reclaiming. Go ahead and keep going. We're about. This is actually the Tulalip Bay where they land. So where we go from here is to find out more about your local communities and traditions and how they interacted with each other. And almost all the tribes interacted with each other. Try to go to an event. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes you end up with a relationship there of somebody you're talking to. Find out a little bit more about local tribal history, what kind of issues are really on the forefront and important now. And there's always something going on. It usually has to do with protecting fish and wildlife, that kind of stuff. You can go ahead. Oh, I put in here some films to watch. I don't know, has anybody seen Sugar Cane?
No.
It's painful. I had to watch it in two. It is actually a National Geographic documentary of a boarding school in Canada. And these are actual people who survived this boarding school. And it's probably one of the most painful documentaries that I have seen. And I've seen a lot. Lost on Fire Trail Road, which is a real story about a missing woman on Tulalip. And they just found her body. This has been some years ago. They just found her body this summer. But it talks about the missing and murdered Indigenous people now. So Lachute Seed Research and Vi Hilbert at the University of Washington, great places to learn about the language and stories. You can actually hear some of the language tapes that we take that were originally from Vi. So wherever you can promote, Lachute Seed Research promotes the language. So this is Vi Hilbert's granddaughter, and she's the head of Native something at Seattle University.
Can you leave that up there? So I
Yeah.
can-
So do we have enough time for this story? Because I don't think we're going to have enough time for a SWAN story.
Yeah, we can do that.
Story, 5 more minutes, is that okay? Okay, so you need to turn on the light. Y'all have to stand up. This is the interactive part. You've been sitting for a long time. Believe it or not, you got the short version. That was as quick as I could make it. You can leave. I'll just come over here. If you can stand up, stand up. Because you're going to do something really big, okay? You're going to do life-altering change, you guys. So, all tooty to hawk. That is a long time ago. And if it were a really long time ago and I weren't quite my age, I'd go, all tooty to hawk. That's how you know how long it is. A long time ago, the Creator went across the world and was leaving language all along the way, hidden by the sun, so nobody knew that was Creator leaving these languages. And Creator got to the Northwest and said, oh, this is the most beautiful place of all. And since I'm the storyteller, I can say this. So we left the most beautiful language, Lashutsi. But there was a problem. Back then, in the beginning, the sky was too low. That's not good. The tall people kept bumping their head, and people were going from this world to the sky world and back and forth. You can't be doing that. There's supposed to be a separation here. It was a problem. But how do you fix something as big as lifting the sky? So one of the elders had an idea that we bring all the people together and come up with a way to solve this problem. But how do you do that? Everybody doesn't speak the same language. Now what do? Well, they figured out that if we just say one word the same, we could do this. You ready? You're for your word? Because you're going to have to help. Yeah, how?
Yeah.
How? Yep, you want to do it one more time? Yeah, how? Very good. So yeah, how just means let's go. We're going to do it. So you also have to go out into the woods and get your pole. Everybody needs a pole. Okay? However you want. And in our stores, you do everything 4 times. So that's you're going to be doing your how 4 times. And we're all going to work together. Even though we don't understand, we have one word. So you ready to try lift that sky? Ready? Yeah. Oh, it just went up like this much. Ready? Yeah. He's still bumping his head. You know, those tall, no, you don't, we have to fix this. We can't have those sky people not jumping down in our world. Ready? Yeah. Oh, it's almost there. So I need you to not just use your muscles, but to use your head and your heart and your full spirit to finish lifting this up. You ready? Yeah. And just as the sky went up, a hunter was chasing a deer and it went up into the sky as one of the constellations. So you did this. You did this together. And I use this story a lot because I think we're in such a troubled times and we don't understand each other. You would think we didn't speak the same language. But we can do a lot if we do it together. So Vi's blessing of we're stronger together. And this, that you could do something so monumental if you just find a way to find that one word that you each understand. I think it gives me hope. So I want to thank you for inviting me here and participating. It's your way to get a stand up after sitting for a while, and thank you so much. If you want to see these, you can look at those.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
You speak different languages.